Hello, friends. Well, it looks like I owe you a great deal of Christmas thanks, for you have taken my latest Christmas Scary Stories video, 6 True Christmas Horror Stories, and made it my most popular video since October. I suppose the only way I can adequately thank you this time of year is to do a Vol.3. So welcome to the castle, and get ready for even more scary, true, verified true, in fact, friends, Christmas horror stories. Up first, we have a very long one, confirmed true, by Half Asleep, titled Christmas Hooded Stranger. And no, that hooded stranger is not Santa Claus. This happened to my very close family friends on Christmas Day a few years ago. I used to babysit for this family, starting around age 12, and I later house and dog sat for them for months at a time, all throughout my 20s. This story is particularly creepy because I have spent a ton of time alone at their house. Main story. So, this family was enjoying a stereotypical Christmas Day evening in the family home. It was winter, and so it was dark very early. It was a drizzly, wet, foggy night outside. It was a large family, and the kids were all grown in their 20s and 30s. Most of them had jobs out of state, but everyone had come home to be together for the holidays. Siblings were just busy playing with Xmas loot, TVs were all on, Christmas music was playing softly in the background, food was being cooked and eaten, and there was a lot of laughing and talking. This went on for many hours. The youngest daughter spotted her dad standing in the middle of the courtyard outside in a black hooded sweatshirt. The hood was over his head just so his mouth and chin were visible, and it looked like he was just staring into the house. She casually called over to her mom, who was in the kitchen, to go check on Dad because it seemed like he needed help with something in the yard. Except her mom replied that their dad was in the bedroom taking a nap. Mom and sister quickly came to the realization that there was a creepy total stranger in a black hoodie just staring at them, not moving on Christmas Day evening. As you can imagine, the family collectively crapped themselves enough bricks to build another chimney for Santa. They proceeded to alert everyone in the house, run around checking the locks on the many sliding glass doors and windows they had, and to wake their dad up. In the meantime, the black hooded creep could see everyone's movements because the house was pretty much completely glass window walls, all well lit with Christmas lights. The guy continued to just stand there in an intentionally creepy, Jason-like pose, not moving, watching everything transpire within. Except now he had a sinister smile on his face. It was obvious that he was enjoying being caught. At first, the family thought it might be a practical joke from a neighbor. The family members all started to call out things to intimidate him like, "If this is a joke, it's not funny," and "We already called the cops." But the guy just kept standing there, smiling and not moving for a long time. Then suddenly, he rushed up to the glass and started pounding on it, not saying a word, his face still obscured by the hood. Obviously, he was intentionally trying to scare everyone, if not simply break into the house. Now, the family really did call the cops. After pounding on the glass for a good while, he ran and hopped the fence near the home's trash cans and headed to the neighbors' yards. The neighbors were also good friends of the family I house sat for, so they called to let them know what was happening, but they never saw the black, hooded man again. The cops arrived within minutes, took the statements, checked all the neighboring houses, but never found this guy. Not long after, the family had their courtyard area completely remodeled, including a new security and light system. The scariest bit of this story for me is that they had no idea how long this guy was just standing there, watching them enjoy their Christmas. Some bonus details now. The home where this took place is in quite an upper-class neighborhood. It's a square home with an interior square courtyard situated on the edge of a steep hill with a busy 6-lane road below. It would be very difficult to climb this hill and scale the back wall to access the back porch area, and even harder to escape down without falling into the traffic below. It would also be hard to exit the neighborhood at all unless climbing through people's yards without being spotted by the cops. The home is angled in such a way that the wind blows right through it, causing eerie creaks and drafty sounds on even mildly windy days. A rustle or a crunch sound would most likely be ignored. The home's layout is similar to many traditional Japanese homes, with sliding doors attached to each section of the house leading to the square middle courtyard. Except rather than wooden panels or screens, this home was all sliding glass window hallways. If someone was in the central courtyard at night, it was very easy to see into all areas of the house without being seen due to the reflection of the lights inside. However, the courtyard does have some dull footway lighting. The home is beautiful too, but they have some creepy art, including stone statues of children playing in the courtyard and a collection of clown art that was so popular in the 80s. Also, their senior dog used to growl intently at empty hallways in the middle of the night. Probably was just blind and deaf, but still freaky. I was often unnerved while house sitting for them, even before all of this happened. That is just the sort of story to get things started for me, friends, this spooky Christmas. I certainly hope it was for you as well. A long, true story to kick things off around here in Castle Danielstein. Speaking of Christmas, friends, please let me know in the comments what your Christmas plans are. I promise I am not trying to be that creep. But please do relate any generic Christmas things or even special Christmas things. Are you going to go to any Christmas parties? Going to put up a giant tree this year? Is it going to be artificial or real, flocked or unflocked? GM Danielson has a flocked tree, a rather natural-looking 7-foot flocked tree, as well as any special Christmas things like Christmas concerts, special Christmas gifts, and Christmas goodies. As I said, let me know. But in the meantime, friends, let us get on to our second true scary Christmas story. I must say, friends, that though I often struggle with upper back issues that sometimes manifest itself in numbness in my arms and neck, I am feeling unusually good today, friends. Must have gotten a really good night of sleep. I'm so happy I can be narrating for you this evening. Up in slot 2, this is a story read for one of my dearest followers and fans, Katrina Cattrall, who, as I say, has been following me for quite some time, if not nearly more than half the age of the channel. I certainly appreciate her fanship and her support of me, and I read this story for her, as she loves the Rocky Mountains a great deal. It is titled Grisly Discovery Made by Forest Workers by Tosser Down. Katrina, I hope you enjoy this story. I worked in a forest maintenance and forest AG for a while. Some friends owned a big plot of land in the Rocky Mountains around the Estes Park Grand Lake area. A group of us, all guys 18 to 38 years of age, would gather together several times a year, go into the mountains for several days and clear scrub brush, make fire breaks, and, when appropriate, cut down Christmas trees. This particular time it was late October. We were preparing for the Christmas season, and our crew of 9, on 3 Gator and 4-wheel drive vehicles, were at about 9,200 feet elevation. There was a fairly significant amount of snow already on the ground. We had put in a long day's work and were headed to camp until the old guy of the crew asked if we wanted to head to the slope. This was a near treeless slope, free of any large rocks, about 100 yards wide, with a tract of big trees on either side. We would go there and, using one of the gators, tow a tube downhill in the snow. It was so much fun. We got to the slope, set a fire pit, cracked open the Jack Daniel whiskeys we'd brought, and started having our fun. We all took several turns being towed. Jeff was the new guy, and the youngest at 18. We were giving him the craziest rides too, swinging him close to the trees just to freak his ass out. A sort of initiation. It was about 1 a.m. too, pitch black, except for our dying fire and that it was lightly snowing. Not the smartest or safest things I've ever done, but certainly one of the most fun. Just as we were wrapping up one of the last rides and heading back to camp, Jeff freaked out. He was stumbling over his words and couldn't express himself clearly at all. But finally, we got out of him that he was about 3/4 of the way down when he had seen a man standing a few yards into the woods. Apparently, he was wearing a trapper's hat, one of those with the flipped-up bill and ear flaps like in Fargo, and a plaid mackinaw. We were all a bit skeptical. I mean, we were on a big plot of private property, at elevation and in somewhat hostile weather. It wasn't surprising that you see things out in this kind of weather. But we all took rifles off the gators and got our flashlights and gave it a look. But we didn't find anything, not even footprints. We chalked it up to inexperience, the spooky environment, it being night, and of course, whiskey, and headed back to camp about an 1/8 mile away. Jeff didn't sleep all night. He was convinced he had seen someone. The next morning, we drove the gators to the house on the property, got in our trucks, and headed into the little town nearby for breakfast. We ate, and while we were heading back to the property to say our goodbyes and go our separate ways, we neared the intersection of the public dirt road and the private dirt drive to the house. There we saw several police cars, as well as an ambulance. We stopped to talk to the police, who informed us the closest neighbors had found a body in a ditch as they were heading down the mountain. Police had followed in reverse footprints up the hill to the slope, and then across a neighboring property to another perpendicular road. They asked if we knew anything, and of course we told them about the Mackinac Man. Sure enough, it was him. He had a self-inflicted gunshot wound, probably just minutes after we encountered him. We still don't know what he wanted, if he was in any danger, or if we could have rendered assistance. Poor Jeff got his whiskey and meals paid for the next several weeks, but he still gets guff about it to this day. Well, Katrina, I hope you enjoyed that true scary story. I've been at various mountain places myself, as I'm sure you have as well, and I've certainly enjoyed seeing the mountains late at night, although not through a snowfall. But I certainly have never seen anyone in a Mackinac, at least not in a catalogue. nor anything as creepy as those fellows saw. I hope it made your Christmas just that little bit spookier. And to make everyone else's Christmas even more spooky, I have another story up, friends, by Cool Cat Kate, another confirmed true story, friends, directly from the author, titled To the Person at My Back Door. Voice almost became a bit too ominous there, friends. This story happened in early December of 2018. It was Christmas break, so I was back home from college and staying with my parents. I lived on the second floor of my house, just above the sliding back door. It's a fairly heavy door too, so anytime anyone opened it or closed it, you could definitely hear it. Our house was built in 1940, so it creaked a lot, and sound traveled through the walls really fast. We lived in a relatively safe part of town, though. The strangest people we've ever gotten were magazine solicitors, and even they stopped coming around a few years ago. We've never come anywhere close to a break-in. Admittedly, I've gotten into a bad habit of smoking weed out of my bedroom window after my parents have gone to bed. Most nights by midnight, I had my window open anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours. It depended on how tired I was, how cold it was outside, etc. But I would leave it open to air out the room while I watched Netflix or listened to music and cuddled with my bong. I always listened to whatever I was watching through one headphone. This way I had an open ear to if anyone got up or started walking into the hallway or called me and needed me for something. That night I had gone through my routine and was lying in bed watching YouTube when the alarm to our house went off. It was the blaring to all hell type of alarm, so the entire house was up and ready to go. My primary concern, which I realize is ridiculous now, was not that someone might be breaking into our house, but that my parents might smell the residual weed smell in my room. My dad poked his head through my door to make sure he knew where I was before he scoped downstairs and turned off the alarm. When he knew I was okay, he just asked me to get into the room with my mom. Creepy, I know. I don't think he noticed that my room's window was open, or the various clouds of cannabis that were wafting out. After he cleared the downstairs, he did a sweep of the front and backyard to make sure nobody was hiding in the shadows. He's pretty paranoid about most things, but honestly, I appreciated his thoroughness. He came back up, told us that he didn't find anything, and we all went back to bed. Although I went back to my weed. Stupidly, I decided not to shut my window. I figured my dad had swept the yard sufficiently, so it would be fine. Plus, my parents were awake and would probably freak out if they heard my window sliding closed. I decided to wait a bit and let them get a little less conscious before making any window-related noise. About 15 minutes later, just as I was about to get up and close my window, the alarm went off again. My dad rushed downstairs to turn it off just as I slid my window closed and pushed both locks back into place. A few minutes passed, and my dad came and knocked on my door again. I opened it, and he told me, "Hey, I think it's just the wind. Don't worry about the alarm." It had been pretty windy that night, 20 to 30 miles an hour, and the door had a little give in its locking mechanism. It could be pulled half an inch before you felt the lock, so we both decided to write it off for the time being. The next morning, incidentally after Christmas Day evening, my dad decided to check the alarm system's app on his phone. To our horror, it showed the door being opened and closed 14 times before the alarm was tripped. Like I said before, it was a heavy door. We've had windier nights and never had the alarm triggered or seen the sensor opened and closed that many times. My dad was telling our next-door neighbor about what had happened the night before, trying to figure out if it actually could have been the wind. Our neighbor told us before, in fact, he'd caught someone briefly entering his backyard on his security camera. He told us he'd probably freaked out once he saw the camera and moved into our house. Just imagining whoever it was standing at our back door right below my open window, triggering the alarm, and no less on Christmas Day evening, and then doing it all again while I laid oblivious in my bed was enough to make me stop my midnight smoke sessions entirely. After this, we've had a series of weird events happen at midnight. The night next, a woman rang our doorbell at the stroke of midnight, literally, and gave my dad her wallet, which he hadn't realized he'd been missing. A few nights later, the alarm was triggered at our back door again, and then, on the Christmas Eve after the first time this happened, I was home alone while my family was at a midnight church service, and the alarm triggered twice, back to back, in a disturbingly similar time span as it had the first night. That time, I didn't bother asking which door had been triggered. I didn't want to know. I took a fairly simple life lesson from all of this. Lock your doors, lock your windows, and set your house alarm, even if you think you're safe. Creepy Christmas Robbery by Possessed Slut. Hey everyone, long-time lurker, blah blah blah. This happened to me and my family when I was around 11 or 12. Background: we live in a small, close-knit southwestern town. My house is pretty small, one story, and about 100 years old. My family of 4, my parents, me, and my younger brother by about 5 years. We used to leave our front door unlocked, mostly because we didn't ever think something like this could happen. It was Christmas night, so we all went to bed pretty early since we were more of a Christmas Eve type family. Me and my younger brother had each gotten $200 in cash from Grandpa to help pay for summer camps as a Christmas gift, and it was sitting in my mom's desk drawer inside her very tiny office. At some point during the night, that money was stolen, along with my mother's car, which was promptly crashed down the street. I was asleep on the living room couch, which was right next to our front door. Important note, our front door is loud. It's made of really old wood and is super heavy, so it creaks almost every time you open it. Our 2 back doors were locked, so they must have come in through the front. Basically, whoever it was must have walked within a foot of me to get inside the house. That's creepy and off-putting, but what really gets me is my mom's car. My mom keeps her car keys in her jacket pocket, which hangs inside my parents' bedroom on the wall across from their door. Again, you have to walk within a foot of my parents' bed to even get there. But even if my parents had slept through a nearby intruder, how did they know where my mom kept the keys or where she hung her jacket every night? It's not an obvious spot to put your keys, and they apparently knew where exactly to look. Even grabbing the cash from the desk drawer made sense. A lot of people keep important stuff there. The car thing just didn't make sense to me. Also, they crashed it right down the street, like I said. Like, literally, into the telephone pole at the end of our street. We figured they were probably drunk, which raised even more questions. How were they able to open our super loud door and walk right by me without me even noticing? How were they able to steal the cash and my mom's keys from right under our noses? Both me and my mom assume that it's probably someone we know, but we have no idea who. And we probably never will. Well, friends, I hope you enjoyed these creepy true Christmas stories, our Volume 3, on this December 2019. I certainly wish you a very Merry Christmas, perhaps even a little spooky Christmas, especially to those who have it rain on Christmas, but not to those who have it snow. Otherwise, Santa could not come if it was a creepy, snowy Christmas. And of course, everyone watching in succeeding Decembers after this one, a very Merry Christmas to you as well. I'm your host, GM Danielson. Please remember to subscribe, consider supporting me on Patreon, and I shall see you come 2020.